Juan, welcome to Talking Immigration in Cars with Coffee. So grateful that you agreed to do this. And oh, look at that, you even got the coffee.
It just magically appeared in this cup holder next to me.
I was asked, did they tell you that I don't drink coffee?
Well, yeah, I think that's, we don't have to put that on tape, but... Okay.
Yeah, so back up 1 second. Like, you have done a huge amount of this, right? Like, you educate the public and immigrant communities about immigration policy in a comprehensive way, right?
Yeah. So, I guess for the audience, I grew up in the United States. I came to Miami, Florida, from Caracas, Venezuela, when I was 11 years old. At the age of 16, I discovered that my parents' immigration lawyer had mishandled our casework.
That is an all too common story. That's so terrible.
And I became politically conscious because I knew that there wasn't another way. Like, I just fresh out of high school, it's like if I just dedicate 2 or 3 years of my life to immigration advocacy, we can pass the DREAM Act or some policy, and then that's it. Then I can go back to school and be a normal person.
Oh, man. So wait, so can 1 second, so does that mean you were out of status when you turned 16 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, no status, and I just kind of like dipped my into the waters of United States politics at the ripe age of 17. So to answer your question, quickly, it's that I've done this for a very long time.
And today's the day after the presidential debate, and there's a lot of immigration talk. Obviously, it was like the elephant in the room. Yeah. Except maybe we should say it was like the cat and dog in the room. So like this crazy. Yeah. So you must have been just going nuts listening to that and hearing all the spew of misinformation that was coming out during the debate, right? Like, what was that like for you? What was your reaction to all that?
Well, last night at the presidential debate, we saw the former president of the United States spouted out this line based on a Facebook post that was circulated through social media. And I think for a former president of the United States to repeat that lie as a way to essentially once again play up into people's fears is not just reprehensible, but it shows you how much this issue has devolved in terms of conversation, right? We are willing to use some of the most anti-immigrant, racist tropes to dehumanize people and these are not just people. These are people who come to this country to start off from scratch, right? They come here, they're seeking to escape, essentially the dangerous conditions in their home country. So in the case of Haiti, the lack of government that exists in that country right now, food insecurity. In my case was my parents decided to bring me to the United States and move their entire lives here because of how violent Venezuela was turning in the early 2000s. And for politicians to use that as a sword and shield to advance their own political interests, and I think it's desperate, it's un-American, and obviously should have no place in the way in which we talk about an issue that clearly a majority of Americans want to see resolved with some sense of decency and humanity.
Right. Yeah, that is really well put, and I feel like it does feel like it strikes at the core of the values that the country we like to think that we believe in and our country's values, and yet at the same time, obviously, if that were completely true, then it wouldn't work, right? and if it didn't work at all, then they wouldn't be doing it. Another thing which I thought was really disappointing, saddening about that, the debate and the way there was so much immigration talk, this absurdity about cats and dogs was immediately fact-checked by the moderators, and Kamala Harris kind of had this look on her face like, see how crazy these things are? The other thing, or another thing that Trump said again and again, he repeated this, was that vast numbers of criminals and people from insane asylums are coming here. He said crime is decreasing in other countries because the criminals are coming here and committing more crime here. And all of that too is false and has been repeatedly debunked. You know, it's not that like nobody who's come here has ever committed a crime, but crime rates are lower by far among immigrants in general, and that's true of this population as well. And immigration enforcement doesn't decrease crime, which to me, you know, there's multiple studies which show that, but that didn't get fact checked the same kind of way. This idea that like asylums are being emptied or prisons are being emptied, this crime, whatever weird thing, like that's all complete. I guess we don't use swear words.
No, I understand what you're saying.
You know, like, but that you know that just kind of passed through. It's just like repeat, throw enough of it against the wall, and like you can't answer all of it. I found that really frustrating.
It has real world consequences. Why? Well, a couple weeks in Colorado, there was an image making its way around Aurora, which is a local city down there, and basically it portrayed a scene of a number of men holding what looked to be assault rifles outside of the door of a couple of apartments of this condominium. And immediately the headline was, Venezuelan gang is overrunning this apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado. And, you know, people were quick to point out, you know, that essentially this is just proof of the criminality and, you know, the invasion narrative that, you know, that Donald Trump and other people in his party continue to spew out. What happened? That image went ahead, created a narrative, and for 48 hours, people just ran with it. Up until 2 days went by, and they started speaking to the people at the apartment complex. They started speaking to local authorities, and it turns out it was just a fabrication. It was just basically an image that someone posted, accompanied by a Facebook post or a social media post, and the narrative took, you know, grew legs and ran in front of all the newspapers. When in reality, the real story is that the apartment complex, the landlord has been mistreating its residents. A lot of those people are lacking basic utilities, and oftentimes the people who are paying the price for these lies are people who are fleeing, again, dangerous conditions in their home country. In this case, yes, Venezuelan asylum seekers who are trying to plead their case. Because,
you know, you're saying that you're from Caracas, Venezuela. It makes me think it must be both very, very difficult to see this debate when they talk about like surges of people and all this stuff. They're like so depersonalized, and also very painful, I would imagine. You know, I was born here, but my family is from Sri Lanka.
Okay. And we're Tamils from Northeast Sri Lanka. Between the
1980s to about the year 2000, about a third of the population of the Sri Lankan Tamil community in Northeast Sri Lanka fled the country because of the conflict. So about 1 million out of 3 million people left, including like most of my extended family actually came. And they came and like lived with us, and that was kind of like my first real like exposure to the refugee experience. I know that 7 million or 8 million, something like that, people, right, have fled Venezuela. Really, I feel like your family is kind of the early wave of this, in a sense, right? And so much of this surge of migrants, and it's a very historically specific thing, which is massive repression and kind of violence and economic catastrophe, and just all of it happening as Venezuela sort of melts down. And I feel like, I just want to say I feel that, and I feel that sort of for you and for the whole community in a way, like to see this very historically specific and sad thing, and people should be talking about it as a sad thing, instead gets totally wiped away and replaced by this very generic image of these like hordes of brown people coming to the border or whatever, you know?
I think what is probably equally as distasteful is that you have politicians courting the Venezuelan community in places like Florida, you know, and asking them, you need to vote for me because I'm preventing this country from turning into Venezuela, while simultaneously they're supporting a political agenda that would essentially take away the only protections that Venezuelan migrants enjoy in this country. Something like, for example, the program that helped me, the For Action for Child Arrivals, or DACA program. You have things like temporary protective status, TPS, that protects my parents. And I think it just shows like another, contour in this debate where people are willing to do and say anything for political gain. And at the end of the line, the people who pay the price are actual people in the community. People like my dad, who owns his own business. People like my brothers, who are working, paying their taxes and doing their things. And, obviously they're people, and they're more than just their jobs. But it's unfortunate that they're caught in the dialogue where they are then, in the general eye, personified or put forth as, violent, gang members or criminals that want to take over the country, when in reality, what they're doing is essentially building community.
Yeah. I actually have wondered about TPS specifically for Venezuela, because the Project 2025 agenda, and also what I think Stephen Miller and other people told the New York Times about Trump's immigration agenda was that one of the things that they wanted to do, they said, was end TPS for all the countries that have it. And I remember reading that and thinking, you're going to end TPS for Venezuela? You're going to say Venezuela is safe to accept and return them as nationals? That's really what you're going to do? I litigated the TPS case in the first Trump administration for it's about 400,000 people.
On behalf of my parents, thank you, because obviously it's important.
So, as someone who's worked on it, lived it, the DREAM Act, but also sort of all this stuff more broadly, and I lived the refugee experience and all that. It's a lot that can get you down, right? We haven't had a lot of jokes
in this conversation.
Are there things that give you hope as you work on this?
I like to think that this country still holds, to some degree, its understanding to the promise that if you do the things that you want to do to build a better life for yourself and for your family, that you too can be part of the American dream. I think it's unfortunate, rather, that we live at a time where we just talk about immigration in the broader sense, and we forget that behind the word or behind the policy, there's actually human beings and there's lives. There we go.
Juan,
and
thank
cheers.
you, Fred. Cheers.
Great work, guys. Thank you.
Yay!